It all goes in post-production, more or less.
We don't. I thought you were playing it before.
Yeah, but that's just for fun.
I know. That's what I like. I like that to start us off.
Welcome back, everybody,
Yeah.
to this week's episode.
Louder. That feels better. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right.
Welcome back to Just the Fit Tip, everybody.
Where you get just the tip of fitness.
The tip of fitness. And we are going to bring you some fun facts, myth busting. It's just the tip. We do a little bit of everything here. As long as it's about fitness, it is fair game.
Just the tip of my iceberg on fitness.
Ooh, my goodness.
It's a bunch of questions that people kind of throw at us or that we come up with, and we just try and debunk a few things that popular misconceptions, silly misconceptions.
Or things that you might have heard in the fitness industry. And
things that sound legit.
Things that sound legit.
Not legit.
Or
Unlegit.
things that people like to get on board with. Things like this very first topic.
Well, let's get right in.
Are carbs evil? And do they make you fat?
Well, obviously, yes, they are evil.
No,
and they do make you fat.
They're not that bad. They're not that bad.
What? What do you mean, Nevin?
Well, and we're going to leave the big screen up. We're going to change it across to this and to this. There you go. Because then they can still see it.
I like that.
And they can see us. Because let's not kid. We're the star of this show.
We are.
All right? We're the star of this show.
Yes. So, are carbs evil?
No, carbs are not evil. In fact, they are very important.
Where do they sit on the morality scale of good, neutral, or evil?
I would say they're just neutral. Okay?
Neutral good or neutral evil?
Just like neutrally in the middle of the neutral scale of morality. Basically, unless you're in ketosis and using ketones and burning fat for your energy source, which means you're having zero carbs, carbohydrates are your primary fuel source. So in that respect, they're not only not evil, they are absolutely necessary.
Okay.
A necessary
So they're
evil.
a necessary evil.
A necessary evil?
Okay. All right.
So I think the reason why people get a bad rap is that people will say, if you have too many carbs, you get fat. You have too much sugar, you'll get fat.
The sugar one is fair.
Well, sugar is carbohydrates, right? So I think if I just put back up on the big screen here for a second, you can see it right there. There's a few things. Carbohydrates are your main energy source, unless you're in a ketogenic diet, and they are stored as glycogen, and that is necessary for energy, for your muscular energy, but also for muscular recovery. Yep. So really important if you're trying to recover from lifting lots of heavy weights or working out a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I think where this initially comes from is typically. I say typically, just it seems to be a common theme in the fitness industry that when people want to cut weight, lose weight, do these challenges, right? Where you want to have a high protein, low carb diet, right? High protein, low carb. And you do it for a short amount of time. If you very drastically reduce your calories and cut carbohydrates out, you will very drastically lose weight. But then I put on all that weight that I lost. What happened? And you get this yo-yo thing going on and on and on and on forever, and people never change what they do. But they go, whenever I cut carbs, I lose weight.
If they also just completely cut out all the fat, they'd probably lose some weight. And if they just completely cut out all the protein, they'd also lose weight.
Exactly. So, of course, cutting any large amount of food group from your diet, you'll initially lose weight. If you just all of a sudden eat 1,000 calories less a day, sure, you'll lose weight. But then put it all back on. Yeah. So I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah. Well, I think what we want to do is we want to look at sort of some other processes why people might think that carbs are good versus bad, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the big ones is the thermic effect of food.
Yep.
So eating food, just the energy it takes to break down and digest and use those macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, it will burn a certain percentage of its own caloric value just to break itself down. So I've put up here on the screen, you can see carbohydrates will basically burn 5 to 10% of their own calories, just breaking themselves down. Fat is only 2 to 4%. Mm-hmm. And protein is 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
So you could look at this and say, if you're looking at a scale of good to evil, that maybe fat is the worst in terms of it gives you the least amount of calorie burn just from eating itself, right? So, and let's just put this into perspective for everyone. If you were to have 1,000 calories of just fat, just carbs, or just protein, if you were to have just protein 1,000 calories, you're actually only going to be taking in about 700 to 800 calories worth because 200 to 300 of those are getting burnt off just from breaking down the protein, right? Fat, it's only 2%, 2 to 4%, and carbohydrates 5 to 10%, right? So in that respect, carbohydrates sort of sit in the middle, you know? That's why high protein is good if you want to sort of burn some extra calories. But that does all sort of lead on to the next slide, which basically talks about why people generally get fat. And it's because you're in a calorie surplus. You're in a calorie surplus, right?
It doesn't actually matter what foods that you're eating. It doesn't matter what you put in your face. If you're in a calorie surplus, you will put on weight. It is just the way the world works. If I give you the same thing, that is a good example. 1,000 calories worth of, let's say chocolate, right? Just chocolate. If right now you're eating 3,000 calories a day and you're not losing weight, and then I just feed you chocolate, but only 1,000 calories worth of chocolate, you will lose weight. You'll probably feel...
Assuming that you're burning more than 1,000 calories just from being alive, which basically everyone is.
Everyone is, exactly. That's why I picked that number. And you'll probably feel like garbage, and you'll probably be really, really hungry and also thirsty because you only get chocolate. But you will lose weight. It's just because you're in a calorie deficit. So the type of foods don't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're eating very healthy. And I get this from a lot of people as well. They're really conscious about their diet. They make sure they're eating very healthy foods, and they're super mindful of that. But they don't count calories. And they just don't really portion control. So they just eat too much of a good thing. Healthy food, but just too many calories. And so they either can't lose weight or they put on weight. So you can do that too.
Yeah. And if we have a quick look here as well, in terms of why carbs are demonized a little bit, I think it's because so many processed foods
taste really good.
They taste really good. They're super palatable because they've been pumped full of carbs and fats as well, but full of sugar to make them taste really good.
All the best stuff is
right.
Carbs.
So as a result, if you're having a lot of processed foods that have a lot of sugars in them, you're by nature eating very calorie dense foods, and your calorie intake is in a surplus, and you're putting on weight.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of people get a little confused as to when we say carbs. There's just this blanket statement where they're like, oh yeah, carbs are bad. But we're not talking about just white bread and croissants and donuts. Carbs is vegetables. Carbs
for the most part.
Yeah, carbs are healthy things. Everything, most things have carbs in them.
Yeah, you got fibers, you got carbohydrates, you got, obviously, the more processed something is, the quicker, and this is where we get into glycemic index as well, but the faster it breaks down and blood sugar, enters your bloodstream as blood sugar.
It's like the difference of eating just a few pieces of just plain white bread. You'll break that down super quick versus having something like a piece of fruit, like a more natural.
Correct. Like the fructose, you're eating it with the natural fiber of the fruit. It takes longer to break down, longer to get into your system.
Yeah, you feel satiated, for longer.
You feel satiated for longer, but also you have a more consistent energy rise as opposed to having a very processed bit of carbohydrates, some refined sugar, which you get a spike, and then it comes and then drop, and you
then you're tired, you feel cranky, you need to eat, you're hungry, and it upregulates how much carbs you want to eat.
And I think that it's just important that people make smart decisions when it comes to their carbohydrates. Because again, you need carbs for energy, unless you're on a ketosis, ketogenic diet. You need carbs for energy. They're really beneficial for muscular recovery as well. Just make smart decisions. Yeah. So that's a little example here. A kilogram of potatoes is going to have 150 to 200 grams of carbs in it. Okay? 1 kilogram of Nutri-Grain cereal is 730 grams of carbs, right? So both primarily carbohydrates, but one is 3.5, almost 4 times more than
one's healthier than the other is. And so a good general rule that I always give to people is if it had a face or if it came from the ground, that's the easiest way to eat healthy. Oh. If it comes out of a packet or a jar or a whatever, it's probably not the best for you. Things that they put in products to make them last 6 months on a shelf. Are you cutting me off?
I'm cutting you off.
Are we getting cut off?
No, we're going into the end of the episode.
Oh my God, yeah. So those things they're usually pretty bad for you if they're supposed to last on a shelf for 6 months, right?
I'm basically a DJ.
So I wanted the song at the start, you wouldn't let me have it.
We're going both hands.
Yeah, so usually a really good a rule of thumb, if it came out of the ground, if it had a face, all natural. That's probably the best way to go.
Yeah, but I think carbs are not inherently evil, and they won't make you fat unless you're eating them in a calorie surplus to what your requirements are.
In excess, just like everything, moderation is key.
Moderation is key. Awesome, guys. Well, we will see you next week on Just the Fit Tip.
Turn it up. Turn it up. I want it to hurt my ears. Louder. Louder. Yes. Louder. Yeah. All right.